Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. Today in this video, we'll be covering a very hot topic in the market right now, that is Spring 3.0.0, which is recently released in late November. We'll see what are the new features, what's deprecated, how can you migrate your legacy application to a very new version of Spring Boot, that is 3.0.0. There are very high chances that you might face such interview questions in interviews because this is such a hot topic right now, and they might want to move their legacy ones to the newer Spring Boot 3.0.0. So they might require you to know all such new features of this new version. So let's get started and see such kind of interview questions. When is Spring Boot 3.0.0 released? So Spring Boot 3.0.0 is recently released in November 2022, being specifically 24th November 2022, as we can see from the Maven repository artifacts. That is 24th November 2022, and that is the recent version that we have got. Why is everyone making such a fuss about this new version Spring 3.0.0? A very big reason why everybody is talking out there is because Spring 3.0.0 has made a very major change recently. And what is the major change? It is actually a breaking change. It has dropped all the support for the older Java versions. So if you're using Java 8, Java 11, first you need to migrate your application to Java 17. Then you can think of moving from Spring 2 to Spring Boot 3. And this is the first major release of Spring Boot after release of Spring Boot 2.0 around after 4.5 years. Also, this is the first Spring Boot general availability release to support Spring Framework 6.0. 6.0 is also released recently in the November. So as developers, we must be aware of these updates in order to work smoothly in our daily life with Spring Boot 3.0 now. What's the exact version release? So we can see the exact version that is currently released as 3.0.0. This 3.0.0 consists of major version, minor version, and patch. Also, not just this general availability version is available to us, we also had many snapshots, RCs, available. Now, these are various versions which comes just before the general availability. And the order becomes, first a snapshot is released, then a milestone is released, then a release candidate is released, and at the end a general availability is released. So what is released on 24th November 2022 is general availability, which is a very stable version of Spring Boot 3.0.0. But before that, we also had snapshots. Now what is snapshot? Snapshot means under development. So a difference between a real and a snapshot version is that it might get updated as it did. Now, if you have downloaded some version of 3.0-snapshot, today you will get a different file than what you have got yesterday or day before yesterday. So this is not a stable version at all. This is just an under development version of it. Then milestone is a release which is probably a not complete feature. It is a vaguely stable feature, just a better than a snapshot, but not a better than a release candidate. So it's just a milestone that has reached, but not a feature complete release. So not stable one. You can see here a milestone also released by Spring Boot 3.0.0, that is M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5. So this is the milestone release. And on the page itself, it says a new version is available, that is 3.0.0, and going to that, you can get a 3.0.0. So even when you are trying to fetch a milestone and add it as a dependency in your project, it will give you a note, it will give you a warning that a new version is available, which is much better and stable than the one that you are trying to add in your existing project. Next is a release candidate. A release candidate is a probable feature complete and should be a pretty stable one. But problems are still there, but they are rare and minor, but worth reporting to get it fixed before a release. So release candidate is a candidate which can be released but is still used by the internal team. It is built, this build is released internally to check for any critical problems that have gone undetected during the development period. So release candidates are not for production, they are just for the testing purpose. It goes under multiple rounds of testing, unit testing, integration testing, all kinds of automation testing, and see whether this is prod ready. Once everything passes, all the minor rare defects are fixed, then what you get is a general availability, which is available since 24th of November to us. So this is a very stable and a feature complete availability. So this 3.0.0 here is a prod release for us, that is a general availability release. Are you looking forward to take your coding skills to next level? Now is a chance to participate in the biggest scholarship of the year by Coding Ninjas to earn up to 100% of scholarship on the best coding courses. They have their scholarship test ongoing and will be ending on 29th of December. and the results will be announced on 30th of December. The test highlights are they have 30 aptitude MCQs. You have 11 days to complete the test, and the best part is there is no negative marking at all. So there is no loss, guys. Also, they have scholarship brackets. If you get into top 10 people, you will get 100% scholarship on their courses. If you get into top 20, then 40% and so on. They have till 70 to 80, you have 15% scholarship. Even to the bottom 20% people who still have 10% of scholarship. The test is completely free. The popular courses are the data structures, algorithm for C++, Java, Python, machine learning, data science, React, competitive programming, and many more. These courses have video lectures curated by Facebook, Stanford, IIT alumni. They have 4.8 out of 5 rating on their courses on the Google. They have 1-to-1 instant doubt clearance sessions. They have dedicated placement portal to help you get placed. So the only thing that you have to do is to register here, log in. The best part is scholarship test is completely free, and the scholarship that you are taking will be applicable to all the batches beginning from 2nd of January till all January. So please don't miss the chance to set yourself apart from the competition and take the first step towards the bright future of coding. Any curious interviewer would have asked you, was this release already scheduled? Since the last release of Spring Boot 2 was in 2018, was the Spring Boot 3 already scheduled? The answer is yes. You can see all the scheduled releases at this page of GitHub, which is the wiki for Spring Boot. It says Spring Boot releases every major and minor versions every 6 months. So what it says is Spring Boot's every new major and minor versions releases every 6 months in May and November. And patches are released whenever it is necessary, whenever there is some hotfix. Looking at the history, the major Spring versions that are released are in every 4 years. The Spring Boot 1 was released 2014, 2 in 2018, and 3 in 2022. And minor releases fills these gaps every 6 months, May and November. So this was already scheduled, though it is after 4.5 years, but this was already scheduled. Now let's see what all new features are added with 3.0. Are these breaking features? Does it have a backward compatibility? And what changes do we need to do? So the major changes are all around the Java version. You have to migrate from your older versions to Java 17 and later to work with Spring Boot 3.0. So this is a very big and breaking change currently. Next is the Gradle. If you're using Gradle, you have to move to 7.3 or later. Older versions will not work. Similarly, Spring Framework, automatically when you insert this dependency of Spring 3.0.0, automatically internally started using Spring Framework version 6, which is latestly released in 16th November 2022. A very breaking change now is Jakarta EE version is used rather than Java EE version, and rest all upgrades and deprecations are done as required with all these changes. So let's get to each and every one individually. The biggest change in Spring Boot 3 is the decision to use Java 17 as the minimum required version. Requiring a Java 17 as a newer one is a big move. And with this move, Spring becomes the first major framework to recently require Java 17 as the latest release, minimum long-term support release. Java 17 is the latest long-term supported version by Java with all new features like records, which is a quick way to create DTOs or POJOs in your application. Instance of changes, some multi-line string changes initially. Whenever you put a multi-line, you have to use a plus sign or concatenate sign to make it multi-line. But now you have text blocks as a new data structure to help you have the concatenated strings without any plus sign or line breaks. So these are all the new features of Java 17. I'm not going to cover this in this video. If you want to know all such new features, what's new, what's deprecated with Java 17, you have to let me know in the comment section. I'll create another video on Java 17 new features. And not just Java 17, Spring Boot 3.0 also works well with Java 17 and above. That is, it is also tried and tested with JDK 19 also. But nothing less than 17 is allowed with Spring Boot 3.0. The next very major change that you can see with Spring Boot 3.0 and a breaking change, which breaks the backward compatibility, is moving from Java EE to Jakarta EE 9. What does that mean? When we move from Java EE to Jakarta EE 9, what you have to do as a developer is you need to make all the changes of Java X packages to Jakarta start packages. At the end, that is why you need to adjust all your imports in your code, otherwise your code will not compile at all. For example, if you have some servlets, some Java X servlet HTTP servlets request, you have to move from Java X to Jakarta. That's the only change you have to do. The rest functionality remains the complete same. And this means that this is a breaking change. It breaks the backward compatibility and is the source of most of the issues in the migration process. So if you think it is easy to migrate from Spring 2.0 to 3.0, it is not that easy, trust me on that. Firstly, you have many steps that you have to follow for the migration purpose. Because it is a breaking change, it can break all your source code. It might take some time to migrate from the legacy Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3 now. Now it will use all the Jakarta package namespace instead of Java X, and mostly it's with when you use validations, when you use JPA, when you use servlet, that is when you face this issue. Now what is Jakarta? What is this fuss about this Jakarta and why we have moved from Java EE to Jakarta? So you might have heard about these four in your daily life: Java EE, Java 2 EE, J2 EE, and now Jakarta EE. You must be tensed and what are all these four all about? What is the difference between all these four? So trust me on this, all these are just a different names for the same thing, that is enterprise specifications that actually internally extends just Java standard edition. So this is just the enterprise edition which is extending the standard edition. Nothing much. It's just that when the first version of Java was released, Java 1, everything was a part of JDK. With Java 2, which was released in 1999, these extensions were broken down as a standalone standard libraries and binaries, and then comes J2 EE. This was there until 2006. In 2006, Java 5 was released and this J2 EE was renamed to Simple Java EE or Java Platform Enterprise Edition. Nothing has changed, it's just a rename. Nothing internally has changed for this. That name would stick all around till September 2017 when something major has happened. In 2017 September, what Oracle has decided. So Oracle was the one having all the rights and responsibilities for Java. Now Oracle has decided to give away the Java EE or the enterprise edition of Java to Eclipse Foundation. Though Java is still owned by Oracle, but the rights for Enterprise Edition Java is given to Eclipse Foundation. Now, Eclipse Foundation has to legally rename this Java EE or J2 EE or E, all of these to Jakarta. Reason being, Oracle has all the rights to Java brand. It cannot use Java brand, because every rights for this Java is with Oracle. Now, having Eclipse as the new owner for Enterprise Edition, all these Enterprise Edition packages has to be renamed to some new name and have the right over it. So the community for Eclipse Foundation has voted and picked up the Jakarta EE, which is nothing but a rename of Java EE and nothing new, just the name change. So technically, being a Java developer, what you have to do is just change the package name from Java X to Jakarta start. Nothing else you have to do apart from that. What else is new? So there are many more features that was added to Spring Boot 3.0.0. That is a native support for declarative HTTP client interface using @HTTP exchange. So some changes are done to HTTP client. Also, there is a very big change done with the Graal VM native image support. Now, this is a very new way to deploy and run Java applications. We all know that J is an interpreted language and hence their performance is lacking because of the interpreted language behavior. Now, Graal VM came to increase the performance of JDK. So, only way to speed up the execution of application in Java and other languages, what it does is it uses the hotspot with just-in-time compiler and ahead-of-time compilation. So, this is nothing but a virtual machine. Now, this virtual machine native images are standalone executables generated by processing a compiled Java application ahead of time, and hence it increases the performance. So, this is just a way to increase performance of Java virtual machine using Graal VM. So, these are the well suited for applications that are deployed using the container images. What else is new in 3.0? You have better observability with micrometer and micrometer tracing. Now, what is micrometer, what is micrometer tracing, and what is observability? So, looking first at observability, it is the ability to observe the internal state of your running application from sitting outside of that system. So you deploy your application to prod, but you need to observe it sitting at your place outside that server, outside that prod server. How do you trace any problem? How is the system working for the customers in the prod? So the three things that is required for good observability is logging, to log any error or exceptions or issues, to have matrices, how your CPU, how is your hardware is working, and traces. So for metrics and traces, Spring Boot uses micrometer observation. So with 3.0, you have micrometer 1.10, and these new APIs were introduced to have traces and matrices. Also, Spring Boot now have auto-configured micrometer tracing for you. So now there is an inbuilt support for OpenTelemetry, Zipkins, Wavefronts, and many more things. Now you might have come across a word called as sleuth in Zipkin. Now this Spring Cloud sleuth is now replaced with micrometer tracing framework in the new version of Spring Boot 3.0.0. So what's deprecated? Support for some external libraries are now deprecated. For example, recently I've seen a show of Apache ActiveMQ Classic. The support for that is till now not available. So currently it does not have support for ActiveMQs, Cache2, HC3, pooled JMS, SMTP for finding the logs. But it is said that most of these support will be added soon with the near future versions of Spring Boot 3.0.0. So either we have to wait or we have to move to the another one. Now a very important part. How to migrate or upgrade to Spring Boot 3.0.0. With all the new features and deprecations we have seen, we understood the very first thing that we have to do is to move to Java version 17. So the first thing that you have to do is in your local program files, you have to have Java 17 now. And you have to move your pom.xml's version from the older versions to 17th version. And with that said, you already have a complete migration guide given by Spring Boot 3.0.0 to help you migrate from the legacy Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3. The link of that migration guide will be given in the description below. Just to compile it in a very short format and to migrate and give you a demonstration, we have taken a latest example of the transaction management. So this is the latest video we have covered where we added transaction. We are going to use the same application which was initially on Spring Boot 2.7.3. We are going to move it to 3 now. And we will see what all changes in the run we have to do to migrate this application to Spring Boot 3.0.0. So the steps becomes: first, migrate to Java 17. In your build path, configure your JRE. Now I have to edit this. I'll add the existing JRE as JDK 17 now. I have to start using JDK 17 now and see if any of the feature fails. So I'm going to run this application, and this Java 17 was asking for permission. It is started, and now I'm going to hit again and see whether a get request is able to go through and fetch all the employees. So in the controller, employee controller, you can see a get mapping with get all employees, calling get all employees. This service is just fetching everything from the CRUD repository, that is employee CRUD repository. So yes, we are getting all the employees. So after moving from JDK 11 to JDK 17, I was not having anything deprecated in the application, and hence this task was easier for me. So firstly, upgrade from Java version to 17. I was on 11. So here my Spring Boot was using the underlying Java version of 11. Now it is using 17, and I've successfully done the first part. Next, as per the documentation, first you have to migrate to Spring 5 and Spring Boot 2 if you're using the older versions. This will help you narrow down the breaking changes that will come even more with the major version of Spring 6 and Spring Boot 3. So this step makes sure that you get rid of all the deprecated classes, methods and properties which are going to be removed in Spring Boot 3 and Spring 6. I don't have to do that because currently I'm using Spring Boot starter parent 2.7. So I'm already on Spring Boot 2. I do not have to do this. If I was on older versions, I might have needed to upgrade to this particular point. So this is done for me. I'll move to next. Now is the main part. You have to upgrade to Spring 6 and Spring Boot 3. Luckily, just by adding a parent Spring Boot parent of Spring Boot 3, you will be internally getting all the support from Spring 6 also. And with this change, I'll have a breaking change. Currently, you can see my SRC main Java has no issues, but as soon as I migrate to 3, the compilations errors will start coming everywhere if I have used JavaX anywhere in my imports. Now, to migrate to Spring Boot 3.0.0, we need a Spring Boot starter parent dependency for 3.0.0 and replace this 2.7.3 with that. So we just need to search the Spring Boot starter parent to a Maven Central. So you can see I have searched for starter parent in this Maven repository and I can click on this. And I can see this is 3.0.0 which is lately released and the last one was 2.7.x. So this 3.0.0, and just I have to have it a version of 3.0.0 and this will internally fetch all the dependencies of Spring Framework into Spring Boot project. Now if you can see, there are multiple compilation errors with this. So build is done. As soon as I have built this, all the dependencies of Spring Framework 6 has come into picture. Everything that is deprecated with Spring Boot 3.0.0 is also getting deprecated in our application, and all the compilation changes as expected was coming here. And I have already told you in the previous slides that you have to change your imports from Java X to Jakarta X. So all this Java X has to be replaced with Jakarta X. So I'm going to replace all of them and close and see if this is working fine. We are able to successfully remove all the compilation errors of the file and this is working perfectly fine. Similarly, in the employee class, you might find all the imports that are breaking and these are the breaking changes. Since you have migrated from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, these changes are not backward compatible. These are breaking changes and you have to replace manually all the imports of Java X to Jakarta. Luckily, as the developer, there is no functionality change, just the name changes. So just by replacing, all of them will be able to remove all the compilation errors that were breaking because of the migration from the older Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3. Now, just to test this, whether we are up and running with the new version of Spring Boot 3.0.0, let's quickly run this application and see if our existing GET APIs are working fine. So it doesn't. It says an exception because the moving from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, we have to change the dialect also. Where do we find this dialect? We have given this dialect in the application.properties. So if your application is connecting from your Spring Boot application to Hibernate, you have to modify the dialect. And the new dialect is MySQL 5 dialect. After this, let's try running this. And seems our application is started successfully on port number 8080. So if your application is connecting to Hibernate, remember to change the dialect. If you have the older dialect, it will not work. It is deprecated. And the new dialect now has a name as MySQL 5 dialect. Simple. And with this, the existing code is working perfectly fine and we're getting our result. That is ID2, ID3 and the name is code. This is the same response that we were getting earlier and hence all the changes that we have done are working perfectly fine. So after upgrading to Spring Boot 3, internally Spring Boot 3 will get all the dependencies for Spring 6. Only the thing that as a developer you need to do is to fix your import statements and rename all JavaX to Jakarta and you will good to go. Also by default we will use Hibernate 6 by default and Flyway 9. So all the new changes had to be incorporated for the Hibernate and JPA that will be deprecated with Spring Boot 3 that has to be removed. Some API specific changes are also there. Only the request mapping will not work. You have to merge it with @REST controller. So here just the request mapping will not work. You have to mark it @REST controller. Also, if you're using REST template to make REST calls to remote endpoints, you have to upgrade to Apache HTTP Client 5. Also, HTTP method is a class and no longer an enum. So this HTTP method became a class and no longer an enum. And this HTTP method has get, put, post, delete. Also, you might need to increase the log4j2 version if you are adding it explicitly, and also you have to check for deprecated libraries. For example, recently we have faced some issues of Apache MQ classic one. So for that also, either you have to wait for the upgrade in the upcoming versions, or you have to use something else. Like for the replacement for ActiveMQ might be some RabbitMQ. So that was all about migration from Spring Boot 2 to 3.0, with the live demonstration of how to migrate from the legacy one to the newer one. If you face some issues, please post those in the comment section. We will try to help you out as much as you can so that you can easily have a smooth movement from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3. Remember to just revise this once before an interview if you have interviews in the recent times, because this is a very hot topic and interview might focus on this, because just to check your knowledge of how much you are connected to the market and what's new is coming around. We also have what is new in Spring Framework 6 and what's new in Java 17, which is the bare minimum requirement of Spring Boot 3. If you want to know about that, just let us know in the comment section. We'll create all these videos for you. Thank you.